Fantasy Rap
with Austin and Ozzy.
Oh, I just love those boys.
Hey everyone, this is Fantasy Rap, and I'm your host Ozzy.
And I'm your co-host Austin.
You can find us on fantasyrap.com. That is fantasywrap.com. Hey everybody, welcome to the follow-up for week 7 of the fantasy season. We'll start out with how we did. I actually went 3-0 again.
Nice.
Thank the Lord that CMC played, because I would have lost one of them.
Yep.
Unless I could pick someone up. It's only an 8-teamer, 10-teamer, 8-teamer. So I could have easily picked someone up.
Yeah.
I mean, I could have picked up either Mason or Mitchell
Yep.
To fill in. So I probably would have been okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm tied for first in my division, which has now put me in a much better place in our long-time league. And the other two, I'm in first place, tied for first with the guy that beat you this week in our Dynasty League, and in first alone in that other league.
Nice.
So
I won the Dynasty League that I'm not in with Oz, and then lost my other two in the other Dynasty, the Dynasty with Oz. And then lost in the redraft league with all my buddies, which just one of those things, fantasy football, second most points scored for the week, but played the guy with the most points scored.
Always makes you feel good.
Yeah.
I mean, it happened to Isaac against me in
Yep.
the one that all three of us are in. And
Yep. Yeah, so
it's tough.
Yeah, I finally had, and it was, it's funny, I had Jerome Ford, who had a really nice day before he was injured, because he had that really big touchdown. Deonta Foreman, who, blew up for the 3 touchdowns. Mark Andrews had 2 touchdowns. Mike Evans had a good game as well. So it was, and then because Burrow was on bye, I picked up Sam Howell, and he got me like 10 points.
He did not play well.
Yeah, well, I saw, in the Yahoo does like the post game, like little, comments and stuff like that, and I think they said Sam Howell's on pace to be sacked like 97 times, and David Carr, his record is like 76.
Wow.
That's how many times. Watching some of that game, he truly was, as soon as the ball was snapped, just running for his life. Yeah. So I think he can be a good.
Yes.
He's shown it. He can be a really good quarterback in the NFL.
Right.
But that's going to be Washington's focus, is protecting him, giving him time.
And that's the same thing. If Daniel Jones were to play the full season this year, he would have been right up there with him, because their offensive line is horrible also.
Yeah.
So, well, let's move into our injuries. And I think based on what you said and what I have in our, or was thinking in one of my leagues, I missed Ford.
Oh yeah, he was like later in the game. He's got they said it's a mild or low grade high ankle sprain. So
okay,
that's
it wasn't on the website that I was looking at, which generally shows all the injuries.
Yep. So I think they're pretty sure he's going to be out this week. See how he is next week, but even with a quote unquote low grade high ankle sprain, that's kind of what they were saying with like Saquon, and he missed 2 or 3 weeks.
3 weeks, I think.
So, and that's kind of what you kind of hear with the high ankle sprains. It's either no time missed, or it's usually like 3 weeks.
Right.
So, that opens the door. I mean, Kareem Hunt had 2 touchdowns. But that really puts him in line for a true workhorse.
Right. I picked him up in that one league that's got a large number of people on the waiver wire.
Yeah, so
free agents.
Yep. So he should be in line for a couple, at least one good week, and we'll see if Ford can come back, because Ford's been, fantasy wise, been really good since he's taken over.
Yeah.
So
They must do some great blocking there in Cleveland.
Yeah. Like I said, imagine an Aaron Jones or a Derrick Henry or if Nick Chubb was,
Right.
gotten his knee destroyed, the kind of season he'd be having right now.
Right.
So,
So next we've got Deshaun Watson, day-to-day with shoulder and head. Apparently they did check him out for a concussion and said that he didn't.
In protocol, and that's why he.
Oh, no, that's not what they were saying. He didn't get put in protocol. He could have been playing.
That guy.
But his shoulder, they wanted to hold him out because of his shoulder. Is what the coach said.
Same one that he missed the 2 weeks or 2 weeks in a bye or whatever. Yeah, I guess that makes sense because with his shoulder, he was saying he couldn't drive the ball at all when he threw it. I mean, he was medically cleared, but he just had all the pain throwing the ball that he couldn't really put any zip on it. But yeah, so
I mean, you can pick up his backup if you want.
Walker.
Yeah, I don't. So. I mean, I didn't put him on the waiver wire because Watson could be back this next week. Mm-hmm. It's just who knows with that type of injury. Luke Musgrave, ankle injury, unknown how long he might be out, if he's even out. Mm-hmm. We did get to see a little Tucker Kraft. Mm-hmm. I don't believe they threw the ball at Tucker Kraft once.
Yeah, I mean, they took the two tight ends in the draft, and everybody's excited. But Musgrave's got the better athletic profile, a little bit better athletic profile, coming from a little bit bigger program. But Musgrave just can't seem to stay on the field. Yeah. I know he had the concussion from was it on Musgrave that guy got ejected? I think it was a hit on Musgrave.
I believe so.
Came in and just, that again is one of those that, but this guy also has been flagged before for dirty hits. Yeah. So that one you kind of know.
He has been suspended for, I believe it was 4 games.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. Because he's a frequent flyer in the illegal hit category. Yep. So. If Luke Musgrave is out for a period of time,
I don't even
Josiah DeGuara maybe. Well, the Packer offense is not in a good place right now.
Nope.
I read an article today about relinquishing play calling by LaFleur and give it to the offensive coordinator and see if, because he sits up in the box and he sees the whole field, so he gets to see all 22 at once.
Yep.
And he may be able to read the field and know how to do some things based on how they're covering, how they're playing, etc.
Yep.
But we also know that Matt LaFleur is a little bit of a control freak.
A little bit. You look at, I think it was Indianapolis. No, not Frank Reich. He's not in Indy anymore, is he? No, I think it was Indianapolis. Whoever the head coach was relinquished play calling duty, and got in our studs here. Top stud Gardner Minshew, who went off against one of the league's best defenses. Yeah, so I agree. I think there's some changes. It'd be nice to see. I know Joe Barry's a good defensive coordinator, but some of the stuff.
What?
Yeah, I think he's good, but he's just the way he's running it with the talent we have is not correct.
And
his scheme is not right for the Packers roster.
Right. I wouldn't call him a good defensive coordinator. He was horrible in his other 2 opportunities. But I think that you're missing Stokes. You're missing Jair. Mm-hmm. You're now missing safety. I'm drawing a complete blank. 26, Savage.
Yep, Savage.
He's going to be out for an extended period of time.
Okay.
You are missing Devondre Campbell.
Rashawn Gary, I think.
Rashawn Gary was
injured, banged up.
But not bad. I mean, they've gone through so many injuries that it's hard to put a quality defense out there. Mm-hmm. I get that, but like this guy was saying, it's not about. I mean, right now the expectation, and frankly, going into the season, my expectation was not that they were going to make the playoffs. Mm-hmm. my expectation was there's going to be a huge learning curve, some growing pains with that. They're a young team, I think the youngest in the NFL.
Yep.
Even with some of the old guys that they've got.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got Preston Smith, you've got Kenny Clark, Devondre Campbell. I mean, you've got some older guys. I mean, even at running back. I mean, Aaron Jones is getting up there in years. And the thought is maybe it's time to take a look at who we have and who we're going to move forward with, as opposed to, thinking that we're going to win all these games. Let's go out and make some determinations. Is Dontavian Wicks going to be on the team? So you have to figure some of those things out.
Yeah, I agree. I think probably take a couple more losses and then they'll start doing that. I mean, that's just the way I think that it kind of works.
Just like last year when we thought that we would see Love in instead of Rodgers because we were not going to make the playoffs. Oh, wait, there was a glimmer of hope.
Yeah.
Next up, we've got Gerald Everett, day-to-day with a quad injury. Scored a touchdown. I think it was a pretty big touchdown in that game.
Yeah, I mean, he's, I think he's getting a little older too, but he's, he's good for a touchdown every now and then. I mean, I think last year with Parham being out for the majority of the season, like he was a really good streaming tight end last season, because he caught a handful of touchdowns over the year. So,
Excuse me.
Chargers, Mahomes came out and just destroyed them, but,
which kind of surprised me.
Yeah, Eckler had a stinky game for Austin Eckler, and, I don't even think Keenan Allen really did a whole lot, because I was playing against him, and I'm thinking I'm going to get like 200 points dropped on me, but it was only like 158 or something like that. So
yeah, it was surprising to me that they ran, it seemed as though their offensive scheme was not geared toward Eckler at all. Mm-hmm. And that always surprises me.
Yeah.
You've got one of the top two backs in the league.
Best player on the, you look at San Francisco, drawing up, putting McCaffrey everywhere.
Right.
And Eckler can do all that stuff too.
He can. Yeah. And when CMC goes out, a la last week, they look horrible.
Yeah.
And although they lost last night, and that wasn't overly impressive either.
No.
So, next up, two guys who are now unknown as to how long they'll be out, Eric Gray and Gary Brightwell. A couple of running backs, one's a calf, one's a hamstring. I don't think that's a major deal.
Are they both on the Giants?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
yeah.
That's what I thought.
So it's
to remember who they were.
So I don't think they see a lot of time other than some.
Unless Saquon's out.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So not a big worry there.
Nope.
Let's move on to our studs. As you mentioned, Gardner Minshew, plus 21.61 points. He was 15 of 23 passing for 305 yards, 2 TDs, and an interception. He ran it 3 times for 29 yards and 2 more TDs. Kind of wish I would have played him in our dynasty league.
Yeah, that would have been nice. He only completed 15 passes.
I know.
Went over 300.
I know.
Which was, like I said, that was such a weird game because you had Myles Garrett looking like the greatest defensive end of all time, just destroying them on certain plays, like that kick, that blocked kick that he had, vaulted over in between the guard and the center, and then had even half a second to stand there and wait for the kicker to kick it, and then just wreaking havoc. And then the next time, all of a sudden, Gardner's running for the, like I said, get 2 touchdowns.
Right.
It was a really weird. It was a weird but fun game to watch. Yep. You obviously had Deshaun Watson. As an Amari Cooper manager, it was very, very frustrating because I think going into the third quarter, Amari Cooper had 1 target. Yep. And in a game where you're in it, and
But
yes,
there's the difference.
Yeah.
If you've got a quarterback who generally looks Amari's way, versus the guy who replaced him who doesn't look his way.
Well, that was the thing. Last week I benched Amari Cooper and Jerome Ford against San Francisco, And Amari Cooper, I mean, he had 5 targets, but he had like 4 catches for like 90 yards or something, you know. So like he had, you know, or 105 yards or something, you know. And then Jerome Ford had a decent game too, you know. So it was just like, yeah, I don't know. Cooper's always kind of been up and down, hot and cold. So, but anyways, yeah, I mean, you know, like I said, Minshew looked good, looked bad at times, looked horrible, looked great. It was just like I said, it's just such an odd game.
The nice thing is, well, not if you're an Anthony Richardson owner, but the nice thing is you at least know that with Gardner Minshew, it's Gardner Minshew's team for the rest of the year. It's not going to be, you know, Richardson might be back, blah, blah, blah. So Gardner Minshew, if he's available, you know, he's obviously an excellent pickup. Next up, we have Deonta Foreman, who was plus 21.6 points. He caught 3 of his 5 targets for 31 yards and a touchdown. He had 16 rushes for 89 yards and 2 more touchdowns. You know, and this is, Deonta Foreman is in a situation where when Herbert and Rashawn Johnson come back, he's probably not going to get a lot of carries. It could change, but I don't, you know, they've got money invested in these other guys. And, you know, I think Johnson's a rookie, so they want to see what he's got. So I don't think, you know, I've got him in both my waiver wire and my sell high, because if you already own him and you're in a league that is needing running backs, you know, teams needing running backs, he's a great high sell right now. If he's available and you need him for 2-3 weeks, he's a great option. Because at some point, both Johnson and Herbert will be back, and that disappears. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think I'm in the situation where I need Foreman for the couple weeks, you know, till Ford can get healthy again. I mean, Cam Akers was out on the waiver wire last night, and I picked him up because he looked the better of the 2 backs between himself and Madison last night. I won't be surprised if... I think by end of season here, he'll be the lead guy, and Madison will go back to what he's been good at, is the change of pace, you know, coming in for the breather for the starter. But, yeah, I mean, Deonta Foreman, you know, blew out his Achilles like his rookie year, I think, and just, you know, hasn't, you know, didn't get any opportunities after that. You know, last year we saw these huge games like this when him and Chuba Hubbard were trading off after they traded McCaffrey away. So he's capable of this. I mean, he still looks good out there. I mean, you know, people are drawing comparisons to Derrick Henry. You know, he's got a bigger guy who can move, and, you know, and I mean, obviously he's, you know, the 3 of 5 for, you know, 31 yards and that receiving touchdown. I mean, he hurdled a guy, you know, spin move, like, he looks good. And I think even if Roshan's back this week, which you would think, but I mean, he missed last week too with the concussion, so you know, it remains to be seen. But I think Foreman's still going to get plenty of opportunities. I would agree. They have a fairly good matchup this week again, to where he could. I don't think he's going to do this. It would be nice, you know, for you, for bias, yes. But, you know, even if he puts up 12 to 15 fantasy points, that's really good out of a guy, you know, who was on the practice squad a week and a half ago. Right. So. Next up, we have Jordan Addison, plus 18.69, 7 catches on 10 targets, 123 yards, and 2 touchdowns, including, you know, it was funny. It was, you know, that very first pass to him where Charvarius Ward. Was it Jimmy? It's just not Jimmy Ward? Am I thinking the wrong guy? You're thinking the wrong guy. Oh, okay. Charvarius Ward took it away from him. Yep. And... I mean, it kind of slid through Addison's hands and was caught up in the arm, back of the arm, and Ward just took it away from him. On the long touchdown of 60 yards, it was the exact opposite. Ward got in front of it, had the ball go through his hands, had him hit him in the chest, and was at the back by his arm, and Addison took it away from him, and off he went. Housed it, and I mean, I think this is what, you know, Minnesota's been hoping, and, you know, they obviously, I mean, you know, 10 targets, healthy amount of targets, right. You know, and he looked really good. This is what they were, you know,
obviously where they drafted him, this is what they wanted from
Oh,
him,
yeah,
and they, were, hoping they were going to get, and they got it, and so I mean,
well,
Jefferson's out for,
at least a couple more
at
weeks,
least a
I think.
couple more weeks. I think 2 more minimum.
Right.
But they're with the hamstring that that he had, saying it could be longer, and remains to be seen.
Right. I mean, he was on
Cousins,
IR.
but
He
if they,
can come back.
like some of the stuff you've been hearing with Cousins. If Cousins goes, Jefferson's kind of tied to him. He'd want to go too, and it could get weird there. But
I would be very surprised if Minnesota doesn't ante up for him next year.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense. He wants to be in Minnesota, but I mean, who wouldn't want to be in Minnesota? Yeah. The guy puts up Pro Bowl numbers every year.
Yeah.
People disagree with me, and I think we talked about this a week or two ago. I think he's a great quarterback.
Yeah,
and I
think he gets underrated and overlooked, and he gets people talking crap and goofing on him because he's he's kind of a goof himself. You know,
but I look at a Jordan Addison, and I think they actually have. I mean, who went before him? They went. It was 4 right in a row. Smith and Jigba.
Did Zay Flowers go before him?
Zay Flowers, and there was one more. And I think that I was taking a look at Jordan Addison.
Maybe Jalen Hyatt.
No,
Giants.
No, Hyatt was, I think, a second rounder. But Jordan Addison.
Did the Chargers take Johnston before? Quentin Johnston before?
Could be. Yeah. Could be. I don't remember exactly, but I think that Addison is definitely the star receiver from the draft. The guy, I mean, he looks seasoned and polished as a receiver, which is just amazing at 7 games in.
Yeah.
6 touchdowns, probably on his way to Rookie of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Yeah. I mean, unless like we're
well
in our waiver wire, like a Josh Downs. I mean, he's been he doesn't put up a lot of yards and stuff.
Well,
but I mean,
Rookie of the Year could still be
C.J.
C.J. Stroud or
true. Yeah, I mean, it'll probably, if Stroud comes out of the bye this week and keeps doing what he's been doing, it'll probably be Stroud. Especially after the week that Bijan had with that weird illness, and they didn't report.
Not injured.
Yeah, they didn't.
And the migraines that he was having the night before, those don't constitute. Oh, yeah, they actually do. So Bijan, the NFL's looking into it.
Yeah, they're saying that Bijan said, apparently there's a report out there that Bijan said he felt worse the day before than he did game time. So whatever was going on, that was a weird thing. But yeah, so I mean, Addison, this is what, fantasy managers were hoping for. Obviously, you don't want Justin Jefferson to get injured, but when it happened, this is what you were hoping for from Addison, and I don't see any reason why it can't continue.
Where we thought that KJ Osborne would step up, it's been Addison, and Addison is getting covered by usually their top defender.
Yeah, I've never really been a huge KJ Osborne, I wouldn't even say fan, but just like, in the opportunities that he does get, he just, to me, like he's been kind of up and down, but we know it now, he's just not a guy who can come in and take over when a Justin Jefferson goes down.
Right.
He's definitely more of a complementary receiver.
Exactly.
I thought that P.J. Hawkinson was going to go for like $150 and a touchdown every week that Jefferson's been out. And I mean, he had a good night last night too.
He did.
But yeah, Addison,
he was used quite a bit.
So good.
Till he had that foot sprain. I was surprised that he returned from that.
Yeah, that was a weird, the way it kind of
folded over,
and then you could see it, and that was what, maybe a quarter after or whenever. Did you see O'Connell yelling?
Yeah,
Adam,
stay
get
down,
because he tweaked his knee or something, and he's yelling at him to get down.
Yeah, knee or
Britt's like, "What are they doing?" I'm like, "Well, he just got a free timeout."
Right.
He's gaming the system a little bit.
Well, I mean, he didn't. Yeah. I think what he wanted was he didn't want them to spend too much of the time off of the time clock when he's injured. If you're going to have to come off, you might as well go down.
Yep. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Next up, we've got Josh Downs, the aforementioned, plus 15.69. He was 5 catches on 6 targets for 125 yards and a touchdown. Nice game.
Yeah, he's been looking pretty good. I mean, they've got a good duo there between Pittman and Downs. Downs obviously his better games were when Gardner was there. I mean, I think he had one decent game with Anthony Richardson. Rest of the season, he's a wide receiver, low end wide receiver 2, and then into your flex wide receiver 3,
right.
Spot because, he had, probably 12 and a half plus a touchdown. 20 points or more.
Right.
For in your flex is amazing.
yeah. Take it all day long. Unless you're stuck playing CMC in your flex.
Okay, well, yeah.
I had to put
a lot of people did.
Well, I had to put him in flex in
flex.
In 2 of the leagues because I wasn't sure if he was going to play, and you have to be able to put anybody in there.
Yep.
Next up, we've got Lamar Jackson, which people are surprised that he wouldn't have been higher, but the expectation was high.
His projections, yeah.
So, plus 15.66, he was 21 of 27 passing for 357 yards and 3 touchdowns. Rushed it 9 times for 36 yards and another touchdown. Yeah. Not surprising.
Well, maybe just a little bit.
Because it was against Detroit?
Because it was against Detroit, whose defense is pretty good.
Had been.
Had been. And he looked like his MVP season that game. just running everywhere. 357 yards passing, only 6 incompletions. That's a really, really good day, for any quarterback.
Right.
He just looked so good. I had to play against him, so. But I had Mark Andrews, so,
Makes up for it quite a bit.
Yeah, so evened out, but then Wyatt, who was playing, had Darren Waller, who ended up with 22 in our league, so it really didn't matter.
Doesn't sound like it.
Nope.
So let's move on to our duds. Unfortunately, Deshaun Watson makes the top of our list, minus 19.59. He was 1 of 5 for 5 yards and an interception. Didn't run it at all. Injury obviously impacted that. We'll have to see, will that continue? No.
Yeah.
He'll either play or he won't. Unless he gets injured mid-game again or early in the game.
Yeah.
Deshaun Watson's not going to have those types of days.
No, and I at this point, I truly don't think we'll ever see pre-legal issues Texans Deshaun Watson, where he was just special, you know, like a lot like Lamar, where, he was really mobile, but he had a big arm. He was a better passer, in my opinion, than Lamar, but he was really mobile as well. But all that stuff, rightfully so, whatever happened, all that stuff that happened, he's just not the same guy from back then. You can tell he's, it just seems like mentally he's not as strong, I guess, or, willing to put it on the line anymore. He's guaranteed all that money.
I was just going to say,
have to play, but
you do.
Just really shitty.
You do have to play, because it's still your legacy. It's still, if you want to make all of that contract, because it's not all guaranteed, was it?
I think
the majority of it.
Most of it, was. But
you sign that big contract. It's always a question of, are you going to perform like you used to? Are you going to take the chances? Well, I don't know if I'd take the chances. Well, I know I would, because I do it day in and day out in softball for no money. And, it's a different, you're right. It seems like a different mindset. His has changed to a, there's longevity, there's et cetera. And I get it, but I also, the competitive person in me does not get it.
Yeah, if if he goes, I don't even remember how long the contract was for, but if he goes another 2 seasons in Cleveland and it's kind of the same as this, I would be surprised to see him on the field ever again.
Right.
So I think if he does want to play for another 8-9 years, if that was his interest, he's got to figure out a way to get on the field and just play through
Right,
it. And
right.
try and find that,
You got to be more like a
vintage
CMC,
Deshaun. Yeah.
where you practice hard, you play through injuries. I mean, certain injuries. I mean, I'm not saying you play with a bad arm and everything, or a concussion or anything like that. I'm just saying, so you've got, issues with your ribs or your obliques, and you're out there. I mean, I saw him come off the field, I think, for one play. Elijah Mitchell came in for one play.
They threw a stat up at one point, and it was like he had played every single. They had at that point had 44 offensive snaps, and he was on the field for every single one of them, including the one that was playing. So it was 45. Snaps because they were showed that as they were doing that one.
I mean, it's amazing that there are players like that. I mean, and it's not just CMC. There are other ones out there, lots of them. That they've dedicated themselves to football and play it. You play it outside of recklessly. You play it with 100% capacity all the time.
Yeah.
Next up, we've got Brian Hoyer, minus 12.19, 17 of 32, 129 yards and 2 interceptions.
Yuck.
Ugly. I personally. We talked about how bad the Chicago defense was. They showed up. But I also I don't think McDaniel is going to be around very long.
No, I doubt it. I mean, because he was the one that went to Denver and did horrible, right?
Yep.
And then
he's also one that came agreed to a contract. I don't remember who it was with. And then pulled out, backed out, then went to Denver and was horrible. Now is here and is horrible. Is he calling all the plays also?
I honestly have no clue.
They are.
I don't clock any really. I mean, I'll watch. Obviously, for sake of the podcast, watch some of the game and stuff. And,
right.
I know the stats and everything, but I couldn't tell you who's calling plays.
I look
doing what.
I look at that team and I think. You've got Josh Jacobs. Well, Josh Jacobs hardly touched the ball. You've got Devontae Adams. You've got...
They started out doing the right thing with Devontae, where he had
3 or 4 passes right at
5, consecutive passes were right to him.
Yeah,
so.
But all of a sudden they get away from certain things and they start getting cute, and then they get themselves into a hole, and then they don't know how to find their way. It's like the... finding your way out of a wet paper bag with one end open.
Yeah.
I don't think Josh McDaniels can do it.
Yeah.
So, I speak for probably a lot of the fans out there. It's time for him to go. And I don't think that Chicago is that good yet. I just think that Las Vegas is horrible at this point.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, I think Chicago's defense did step up. They did look better as a unit in that game, but again, too,
they're young again, too.
I mean, they're going against a Brian Hoyer who's, he's got he's not even 500 in career wins. He's well under. I mean, but granted, he's never been a true starter.
And who did they start? Bajan.
Yeah, didn't have an amazing stat line, but looked good.
And
looked
Deformer.
So, yeah,
I mean,
that too.
Yeah, I mean, it's
you can't tell me Josh Jacobs isn't better, equal to or better than Deonta Foreman. They just didn't use him or
right.
So.
I mean, it happens so many different times in football, and I had another one that I was going to talk about, but it's escaped me right at this point. We'll come back to it if I think of it, but it's utilizing the players with certain skills and then getting away from it and then losing a game because you didn't do what you should have done as a coach. So, I mean, I'm not a coach. I don't claim to be one. I have played one on TV before. So, next up we have Bijan Robinson, who was minus 11.31. He had 0 catches on 0 targets, and he had a rush for 3 yards. That was a productive day. And I get, if you've got a headache, migraine, I believe it was a migraine the night before. My son dealt with migraines or deals with migraines, has dealt with them since he was 2.5 years old. They're horrible. But he shouldn't have even been on here as he should have just been listed as out.
Yeah. I mean, if it was a thing where he was pushing to play, and
but either way,
Arthur
he should be
Smith
listed
was
as questionable.
Yeah, well, that's where I was headed next, was at least throw something out there for. I mean, obviously, the majority of these guys don't give a crap about fantasy.
Oh yeah,
but,
yeah.
It's.
But I'm talking about from the other teams.
And, yes, and whether it was you get like every now and then, was it the Cardinals or I can't remember who, but somebody had. They're like, well, we're not going to name our starting quarterback this week for competitive advantage, But, going into that week, there was no question that Bijan was going to play. So,
right.
Of course, that team is prepping for Bijan Robinson.
Right.
And then, granted, Atlanta won with Cordero and Tyler Algier. So, the coaching staff and Arthur Smith are going to go,
they're going to get fined.
Win. Yeah. But they can still go, we can still win, whether Bijan's out there. So fantasy-wise, I think this is taking Bijan's ceiling and knocking it down. I think he'll still be really nice and consistent once, next week if he's, which, you would assume, that he'd be back.
Yeah.
But I don't think you're going to be seeing 25 plus points, maybe a week or two here and there from Bijan.
Yeah, I don't know what they're protecting there.
Yeah, I
it's
don't know either.
You've got
Bijan did something stupid, stupid night before, or 2 days before, or
ate too much chocolate apparently, because that's one cause of migraines.
Yeah.
Next up, we've got Cooper Kupp. Minus 9.72. He had 2 catches on 7 targets for 29 yards. I was playing against him in one of my leagues, and I had Puka Nacua, who had a huge game.
Yeah.
Which is why, I said, I don't know with all of these shiny toys how you can make everybody happy.
Yeah.
From Kyron Williams to Nacua to Kupp to Everett to, it's just one of those, but Tutu Atwell.
Yeah.
Atwell had a touchdown. Mm-hmm. Like I said, I believe that Gerald Everett had a touchdown.
He's on the Chargers. You're thinking of Tyler Higbee.
Yeah. No,
I think Everett was at one point on the Rams.
Yes, he was.
Yes.
Yeah. But you sit there and you think, do I want a guy who I don't know? Because last week it was Kupp and not Nacua.
Yep.
And this week it's Nacua and not Kupp. Mm-hmm. What do you do?
You just have to play them. Those two. I think 2-2 in the right matchup, you could throw them in. But if it's not a great matchup, you either temper expectations or you swap them in for something. But I think, Puka and Kupp, you just can't, unless one of them starts putting up, consecutive weeks, where they're
like Nacua was at the beginning of the season.
Well, yeah, but
right now I would have more faith in him, just because he's been doing it all year long, maybe minus a week.
Yep. Yeah.
And Kupp was out, and now he's back, and he had, a good week, maybe 2 good weeks, and then a bad week.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think anybody, or very few people, thought that the Steelers were going to win that game. I streamed the Rams defense this week, and they got me like 4 points, which is, you start with 10, so I can tell you how that went. So it was, again, a kind of a weird game. Like you said, you figured that they'd be up, and even when the Rams are up, they still like to throw the ball. So, yeah, I don't know. I think both of them are going to be fine. I wouldn't be worried.
No. It's more along the lines of, that fear of, you've got a guy that's going to get you 10 points, and you've got these guys who could go between 3 points and 23 points.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're just going to have more variance. I actually sent a trade out, which I retracted because I'm trying to figure out. Right now, I've got like 4 running backs on my bench. I got Derrick Henry back off a bye, which it sounds like Malik Willis and Will Levis are going to play this week, so I'm hoping that translates.
Both at the same time?
Well, yeah.
Better chance of getting a completion.
Yeah, I'm just hoping that translates into Derrick Henry going back to 30 carries a game, hopefully. But anyways, I sent a trade out I was going to trade Amari Cooper for, it sounds bad, but Najee Harris. Because Najee did the same thing last season where he started out just horrible and then he had a decent week.
Yep.
I mean, he had 10 more carries or opportunities than Jalen Warren. Granted, Jalen Warren did score this week as well. I think Najee did too. And almost had a receiving touchdown, so he could have had a big week this week. But Najee did the same thing last year, just horrible. And then their bye week hit and he came back and then he was a top 10 running back rest of the season. So Amari Cooper, for my roster, he has too much between bottom floor of 3 points or whatever he had this week to 30. He could put up 150 and 2 touchdowns. For my roster, I can't handle.
Right.
I have a couple other players that are like that. It's just too much for my roster where I can go from 89 points a week to this week being the second highest score, but getting unlucky and matching up with the highest score of the week. So to flip like Amari Cooper for Najee and just get that steady 10 to 15 points every week helps out my roster. I think if you're Cooper Kupp, if you need quite a few pieces or 2 good pieces to help, when I say balance, I mean just with less variation of floor to ceiling might be a move. Same with Nakua. I was talking to a coworker today who got an offer for Patrick Mahomes, and that offer was Aaron Jones and Michael Thomas for Patrick Mahomes.
You
I
dissuaded
no.
him from that?
Yes.
This is
no.
the same guy that wanted to trade Mahomes for
Pacheco straight up. Yes. So and come to find out, my coworker, sorry Marcus if you listen, hopefully you do, informed me, because we were looking at the rest of his league, that he had dropped Alvin Kamara a week before he came back from his suspension, and Kamara's been a top 5 fantasy PPR running back.
Oh yeah,
every single week.
I don't know how with 12 or 13 catches.
Yeah. So I was trying to same with his team. He's got Mahomes, and then the rest of his team is, 1 week will blow up, and then the next just bad. So he's got to. I told him the same thing. You got to look at your roster, and you look at a guy like Cooper Kupp or Puka, and if you, for some rosters that high variance is a benefit, and for some it's a detriment. So it just kind of depends on how you're doing. But if you got them and you're keeping them, you just, no matter what, you got to play both of those guys.
Yeah, I just want the Cooper Kupp owner in my 30-plus year league to know that, no, I'm not going to trade CMC for him.
Karma come back for you.
Those of you remember that I traded Cooper Kupp for CMC last year, and it got me into the playoffs, and it got me into the second round of the playoffs, but lucky trade for me.
Yeah.
Next up, we've got Calvin Ridley, minus 8.31, 1 catch on 4 targets, 5 yards. I was watching that game, and he was on the sidelines more often than I think he was on the field.
They were the Thursday night game, correct?
Yes.
Against the Saints?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. That's what I thought. Yeah, I was kind of in and out during the game too, but this is like 2 or 3 consecutive weeks of really underperforming.
Why did you trade for him?
Oh, you're talking about the Jaguars?
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't trade for him.
Yeah. Why did the Jags trade for him if they're not going to use him?
Yeah, I don't understand it either.
ETN is doing great,
mm-hmm.
And unless Ridley is a cancer on the team, the guy, the first week out, showed out.
Well, too, and there's some history of, obviously the gambling thing, but even, before all that came out, he stepped away from the team for mental health, and so I hopefully not, but if there's something going on there where he's not confident in himself, and it's showing in practices, and that's why he's on the sideline more than he's in. I mean, obviously we've seen the flashes in the film of him being a true dominant receiver like he has been years ago. I mean, think
that's
about another weird situation where even Trevor Lawrence has been so up and down, and he's been mostly down lately. So
this is a guy who seems to have the skill set to be a top 10 receiver year in and year out in the NFL, in my opinion. So let's move on to the waiver wire. I put quite a bevy of people on here, starting with we talked about Deonta Foreman, Josh Downs, another one that I really like. Yep. Josh Kelly is getting quite a few opportunities.
Yeah, that one. I mean, if you're the Eckler manager, if you got space, for the handcuff, But I mean, we saw. He had that really big week 1 or week 2 with Eckler on the field as well, and Eckler had a good week, and then Eckler was out, and Kelly stunk. I mean, he lost you weeks because he was so bad. So that one I think for handcuff sake, but he is getting opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, it's always, in certain leagues, but 16-team, 2 running back league, that could be what makes a difference, because there are teams that are out there not playing the wrong guy, playing guys that aren't scoring anything, etc. So, next up, Jake Bobo. Jake Bobo. What do you think?
That was a heck of a catch, that touchdown.
I mean, you look at, I was thinking, DK's out. So I took DK out of my the dynasty we're in, and I had to play Lockett because Thielen was on a bye, and I thought, this is great. Lockett out, or DK out. Lockett's going to pick up some of that. Lockett didn't see much, and it was Bobo and
JSN.
Yeah, JSN.
Yep. Who I started this week too. Once I heard. In both, I think I have him in both of my dynasties. I started him in both, hearing that DK was out, because JSN's the same, where he's just been underutilized so far in that offense, and it's been kind of head scratch a little bit, because of what he was in college, world beater in college. Just a monster, and they're just not. Granted, he had the wrist. I think it was his wrist, broken wrist or fractured wrist or something early in this preseason or something like that. So.
He was last year's Marvin Harrison.
Yeah, on the same team. So,
he was the stud putting up all the numbers.
Yeah, was it like Olave, Garrett Wilson? Both of those guys came out and said that JSN was the better receiver out of that. And you figure if Marvin Harrison was a freshman or sophomore at that point or whatever,
right?
That receiving core,
that's just stupid.
God. So, but there's Seattle. I think this was the first game that DK's ever missed, wasn't it something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So just spreading the ball around a little more. Better matchup.
Which I'm a fan of, but if you've got Lockett and he doesn't see either of the 2 touchdown throws, it kind of stinks.
Yep.
Next up, we've got Darrell Henderson. We talked about him.
Yep.
I think he would be. Did we talk about him? No, we didn't.
We did. You and I did beforehand. I said he got sent back down to the practice squad, which
doesn't mean anything. Other than because we've seen that happen. They can go down X number of times and be brought back up, and before they have to be on the active roster.
Yeah, because he, like I said, I was talking with a buddy, and I was like. In my eyes, Henderson, if you have to play somebody from the Rams this week, it would be Henderson, because he knows the team, and he knows McVay, because he was their running back for 2 years, and he had one really good year, fantasy-wise with them. And he came in, and I think he had 18 carries or 18 total touches or something like that, a touchdown. So he was a good fit if you took the flyer on.
Right. So. People were looking at Zach Evans first, and Zach Evans
was going for
Yeah.
like Fab, people were just dropping
it all,
they
and now he's he didn't see the field. So next I've got Tajay Spears. What do you think the percentage is that King Henry gets traded?
I mean, like I said, you got
Better than even?
I would say so. Probably I'd say 60%. I voiced my opinion, 2 weeks ago or whatever. I think they need to just do him a favor and send him somewhere with a better roster that will utilize him for what he has been for Tennessee for all these years.
Right.
And Tajay Spears has shown. I mean, he's a little bit, obviously anybody next to Derrick Henry smaller. Don't get me wrong, but just in general,
except for AJ Dillon.
True. Yeah. Well, that guy's.
Did you see the? He doesn't look bigger than Henry.
Yeah.
But they showed a stat based on weights, and AJ Dillon is the biggest, and Henry is the second biggest, and I just sat there thinking, wow, I didn't. But they don't call him Quadzilla for nothing.
That big around. So, but yeah, I mean, Tajay Spears has shown. I mean, the dude's electric. I mean, he's come in. He's good pass catcher. That one against the Ravens in London got him down into deep into the red zone on that catch and run there. So I think. If the Titans were going to go and just go full, because Traylon Burks hasn't been, he's been almost a bust. I mean, I know he was injured last year, but I mean, this year came in healthy and he hasn't done anything. DeAndre Hopkins has been cold more than he's been hot. And now you got Malik Willis and Will Levis coming in for the foreseeable future until Tannehill comes back. So, I mean... Yeah, I mean, I think Tajay, if they trade Henry, he's going to be the guy there,
right.
And you can never have too many starting running backs, So, I mean, I stashed Tajay weeks ago in case Henry got hurt, and I'm crossing my fingers they do move Henry, because like I said, I also have Henry, so that'd be good for me to get him in a new environment as well. So.
Yeah, unfortunately, Tajay was drafted in my 16-teamer. Next up, we've got Kyler Murray. Coming off of injury.
He got designated, I believe, right, to return. So he's probably got,
21 days or something like that.
But they did that, 2 weeks ago? Or was that last week they designated him?
Not sure.
Yeah, so.
I'm not a big fan of his.
Mm-hmm.
Again,
there's that many Kyler Murray fans.
Well, he's undersized.
Yeah.
He's got a decent arm, but I think he runs too much.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, he's at a higher risk of being injured.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but when he's on for fantasy, he's dynamite. I mean,
he is.
So, like Brittany, last pick of the draft, I had her draft him just to throw him in her IR and stash him. And,
and she'll get to use him.
Yep.
So, last one on our waiver wire is Gardner Minshew.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about it, earlier, and it's his team for the rest of the season, unless something happens to him, and he was our top stud.
Yep.
So if he's available out there, and in certain leagues, that who's keeping more than two quarterbacks unless you're
in a super flex. Yeah.
Right. Well, no, but I mean,
dynasty.
16-team league, we keep two, obviously.
Yeah.
Or unless you've got an IR spot where you're putting a guy like Kyler Murray. Otherwise, Gardner Minshew wouldn't have been on a team. Yes, yes, I do.
Yeah.
Do have him on the dynasty.
Yeah.
Just so happens. So
yeah, I mean, I think he's if you've got like a Dak, or obviously like Trevor Lawrence right now too. I mean, even Jared Goff, who had a bad week because they looked horrible against the Ravens. I think Minshew, you put Minshew on your bench, and he's definitely whoever's got the better matchup of the two you stream, for your team that week. So.
Right. Now we move on to our buy low. I still like T. Higgins as a buy low. Thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, bye week for the Bengals. Burrow getting healthier. Hopefully they're, Higgins, is back into practices and stuff, and they're starting to figure out, because, that offense hasn't looked that great. Joe Mixon's been kind of a disappointment this year as well. Granted, he is, people kind of were seeing that looming on the horizon. But hopefully they can come out of the bye. I mean, they've got some tough matchups. Well, I guess, Minnesota just beat San Fran. I think Bengals have San Fran this week, this coming week. So might not be that scary of a matchup anymore, So could be good. And then I think Burrow's got like Houston after that, who's actually fairly decent against wide receivers and quarterbacks. So, but then the schedule opens up nicely for the Bengals. So, if you get a piece of that, especially somebody like Higgins, who got drafted, like we've talked about every week, got drafted higher, and you got a manager who's just frustrated and just wants done with it. You probably could get him for a good price.
It's funny because, I tried to get him 4 weeks ago, maybe 5 weeks ago. And the other GM was, at 2-0 at the time, 3-0 at the time, 4-0 at the time. And he kept on saying, no, I'm good. Yep. He's 4-3. Not to say that. Yeah. Well, actually, he probably would have won some of those games because I was willing to trade him either Lockett or Thielen, and Thielen's been blowing the top off of him. So, I mean, I consider Thielen as a top 15-ish, top 20 receiver right now. Yeah. So, I'll just stay with what I've got and keep my 2 extra running backs, and we'll see what happens. Yeah. Next up, we've got Amari Cooper. Again, the up and down. Yeah. You talked about it.
Like I said, I've got him on my roster. I mean, I've got my receivers are Diggs, Cooper, Evans, and then I've got DeAndre Hopkins on the bench. Just picked up.
Do you play 3 or is one of those a flex?
One is a flex.
Okay.
So usually my starting lineup is Diggs, of course, and then Cooper and Evans, and then I just, luckily I played DeAndre 2 weeks ago when he had that big week of like 140 receiving yards or whatever it was. So I mean, as a Cooper manager, like I said, the way my roster is, he's costing me some weeks because of the high variance, whereas if you're, the core of your roster's a lot stronger and, you want to bring in some variance in, I mean, it's, like I said, it is a gamble, but, if you're consistently scoring, 120 points and you're eking out some wins, but you bring in a Cooper who, if he hits on the right week, like if he could have hit this week for me, could have propelled you into a win,
right.
So it's, like I said, I agree. I mean, he's the number one, and you figure if Deshaun Watson can work through the shoulder injury and get healthy, I mean, the rest of their season schedule is pretty good as well. They got some good matchups, and in good matchups at home, Amari Cooper usually ends up as the wide receiver 4 on the week. So, it's kind of picking your battles, but as a manager, it gets a little tiring and frustrating.
Yeah, very much so. Last on our buy low, I have Aaron Jones. He's been injured. I'm not sure what that offense is going to do. Yeah. They could possibly trade him. If, it almost behooves them to trade him, because then they can look at the other players, etc., and save some money. You've got other mouths to feed. Yep. I just, right now, he is not performing at the level that you bought him for.
Oh yeah, I think he's going, third. Probably in the third or fourth round, and especially PPR because
second
to in certain formats. So what you paid for him, you are getting zero return except for week 1. You got all of your return week 1, and then you've gotten zero since.
I mean, he's been an absolute stud each of the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, and he's same in that third. If he into the third, into the fourth in some leagues, he's always been an amazing value because of that too.
Right.
So you're talking about these your CMCs and your Henry prime Derrick Henry and Mixon and all these guys, And then, everybody's like, Aaron Jones, I guess, is like,
and
RB9.
it's always,
but then he usually ends up,
it's
RB6.
Right.
5,
it's always hard to decide on him because for the last couple of years, we've been wondering, is it going to be A.J. Dillon taking over some of those carries, or is it going to stay Aaron Jones?
Yeah.
And we've seen that with Aaron Jones out, A.J. Dillon doesn't seem to be the answer. That doesn't mean that he's not going to be the answer. He just hasn't, played extremely well.
Yep.
Part of that is the offensive line is decimated. So, it's hard to say, because all I hear is, A.J. Dillon is horrible. Well, A.J. Dillon is running behind probably one of the bottom 5 offensive lines in football right now.
Yeah, agreed.
And I'm not saying that it's going to get much better because after this year, we're without Bakhtiari. Bakhtiari is not going to be playing in Green Bay next year.
No.
Zach Tom Yosh Nijman won't be back. I don't know where they're headed. If they're thinking, we're going to stay young, we're going to build the team up, well, then one of their first round draft picks, if they have end up with more than one, they shouldn't, but is going to be an offensive tackle.
Yep. Yeah.
In my mind.
Yeah,
so
agreed.
Now on our sell high, I've got Puka Nacua. Like I said, I don't know which one of those is going to be doing what on any given week. So you can probably get a lot for him right now.
Yeah, that was that coworker with Mahomes. One of the counters that I told him to do was, I think that roster that offered him Jones and Michael Thomas had Puka in his flex, and I said change Michael Thomas and Puka and Aaron Jones for Patrick Mahomes, and that's a good trade.
Yeah.
So you turn. Granted, Puka and Aaron Jones, that is kind of hefty, but turn that into Mahomes, and that team's roster is pretty solid throughout.
Right.
You kind of you bite the bullet, see what happens. Solidifies you at the top end, and you just bring a bench player up. But yeah, Stafford still looks like he's still got zip on the ball. He's always had he's a gunslinger or whatever.
Right.
Still looks, he's not banged up or anything. So, I think they're just going to go through games where both of them have 125 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah.
Or they're going to go through like this week where Puka has the game and then Cooper Kupp has the game.
Right.
And then Tutu Atwell's in there a little bit, and then when Kyron comes back, he's, the more you talk about it, the more you're like, oh, geez. But
right. They're all good players. Mm-hmm. But my fear, once again, is you can't spread it around to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You can. And it would be great if you could give a third of the points to each of those guys, because then you know what you're getting. But you don't know what you're getting. Yeah. And I personally don't like the variance. Mm-hmm. And I've talked about it. I hate the variance. I want steady numbers. Yep. I want predictability. And when my team goes out there and they unpredictably drop an egg, lay an egg, it's like, oh, I didn't see that coming. Mm-hmm. Obviously, no one sees any of it coming, but you just have to, whatever you're comfortable with is what you have to do.
Yep.
Our last sell high is Donta Foreman, and we talked about him earlier. Mm-hmm. If you have him and you don't need him, you picked him up on waivers before the week.
Yep.
He had the huge week. Mm-hmm. We had a guy in our dynasty league that came out and said, anyone who gives me a second round pick in next year's rookie draft, I'll give him to you right now. I don't know. Did he offer it? Did he make an offer to you of that?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, I got an actual.
I didn't. Yeah, no, I didn't.
I got an actual offer.
I got an offer for it.
And I've got CMC. I've got Kamara. I've got drawn a blank.
Too many teams.
Houston. Yeah. Houston. Dameon Pierce. I just have to say the team name, and I can you get all these teams and stuff, and you're like, I don't remember all my players on all my teams. You try, but you can't. So let's move on to our loser of the week, and I've actually got two, and this is in my league that I've been in for 30 plus years, and this is kind of embarrassing. Guy played Pat Fryermuth. He had a tight end on bye on his bench, but didn't pick anyone else up because may not have wanted to waste $2.
Yeah.
He lost.
Well, it sounds like Fryermuth's going to be out potentially for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Even. So, I mean, rostering
but
tight end, but
yeah,
who hasn't been
right?
He
hasn't
really,
been the guy that we would have expected. I mean, he went a lot higher in drafts than.
Well, people were thinking this year was going to be,
right.
I mean, the preseason helped out the Pittsburgh, fantasy offense a lot because they looked really good in preseason. Fryermuth looked really good, and people were thinking he was gonna, creep up and be in that, 4, 5, 6, range for tight ends, and just hasn't. Obviously, Matt Canada has been doing a horrible job in Pittsburgh, but yeah.
And then the other one in the same league, we had a guy play DK Metcalf instead of Jahan Dotson, who was on his bench.
Yeah.
You'd
like to give the benefit of the doubt and just say that was I forgot to look at my team. I mean, I've been there, but again,
The only time I haven't looked at my team is maybe if I'm at church. And we get out of church too late for me to recognize that it's going to be. But I usually contact the commissioner ahead and say, hey, I'm going to be in church,
in case
or
this happens.
I've got something happening. If this guy is listed as out, I want this guy placed in. And he says, great, let the opposing manager know, send him a text, all's good. It's not that hard. But, people have lives. I get that. I'm retired. My life is easy.
Got a toddler. It's hard.
Yeah, and another toddler on the way, or another baby on the way. So, woohoo!
Yeah.
So that's all we've got for this week. Can't think of anything else. I was still trying to remember the other team I was going to rip on for lack of utilizing the tools that they've got.
Yeah. I'm trying to run through, and I can't really think of. I don't know what team
it could be the Packers.
Yeah.
I mean, the Packers, any team that, they've scored, 16 first half points in the last 4 or 5 weeks or something. And it's embarrassing that you've got the weapons that you've got. I mean, they're all young.
Yeah.
On offense, they're almost all young. And like we said, you've got no offensive line. But to sit there and not have options available, Jordan Love, he's a horrible quarterback. Now, he has been very inaccurate with his throws, and that he's got to fix.
Yeah, that was a comment I think my buddy Isaac had heard from somebody, was that they're like, why does it seem, especially in that game, like he's trying to just loft and drop these passes in perfectly every time. He's, and it's a pass that kind of demands a little more on a rope zip. It seems like he's trying to do all these pretty little floaters and, drop it in. So
I like dropping a floater every once in a while. Keep it real.
Yeah.
So that's all we've got for this week. Hope you enjoyed it. I am Ozzy.
And I'm Austin.
Have a good one.
See you.